explainer covering that epic July 4th round of 16 clash. You know the one where 2026 World Cup co-host Canada was ultimately knocked out by an absolutely relentless Moroccan squad. Okay, let's just quickly look at our game plan for this explainer. We're going to hit the round of 16 clash, Canada's first half push, Morocco's clinical second half, how they're rewriting African football history, and finally, what's next for Canada. Because look, we aren't just looking at the scoreboard today, we're really exploring the tale of two very different footballing trajectories. Alright, part 1, the round of 16 clash. To really understand this matchup, we first gotta set the stage for what happened in front of, get this, almost 69,000 roaring fans down in Houston. So on paper, a 3-0 exit for the first host nation to be eliminated, yeah, it sounds pretty decisive. But the reality on the pitch, it was this fascinating clash of a gritty, emerging underdog taking on a heavily established giant. And honestly, you really see the gap before a single ball is even kicked when you compare squad values. Morocco sits at a massive 447.7 million euros. That is more than double Canada's 198.6 million. Right out of the gate, that gives Morocco a tremendous advantage in depth and, well, just world-class talent. Moving into part 2, Canada's first half push. Now, despite that massive financial and historical gap we just talked about, Canada absolutely did not come out playing like a team intimidated by the moment. No way. Canada's manager, Jesse Marsh, knew exactly the mountain his team had to climb. I mean, he literally called the preparation a gory, horrible nightmare because Morocco is just that good. But despite that immense respect, his squad completely disrupted Morocco's rhythm in the opening 45 minutes with sheer pace and intense athleticism. It was wild to watch. If you actually dig into the underlying analytics from Footy.live, Canada really dominated the early momentum. They held a massive 51% to 13% edge in the deserved win metric over Morocco during that opening stretch. Just a remarkable push from the co-hosts. But, you know, capitalizing on that momentum is everything. Right in the 10th minute, Tani Oluwase had this massive scoring opportunity, but he was completely stuffed by world-class Moroccan keeper Yassine Bouno. And as Canadian player Richie Larea noted later, missing golden opportunities like that early chance, that is the exact difference between an emerging nation and a true global powerhouse. Which brings us to part 3, Morocco's clinical second half. This is where the narrative flips completely, and we see what true cutthroat tournament ruthlessness actually looks like. So, despite generating almost zero offense in the first half, Morocco capitalized instantly after the break. Just like that, a clever set piece in the 50th minute found an unmarked Azzedine Ounahi, who buried it from outside the box. Then, as Canada desperately pushed for an equalizer, Morocco struck on the counterattack with another Ounahi goal at 82 minutes. And then, a final dagger from Soufiane Rahimi, deep in stoppage time. After the match, Jesse Marsh was defiant, saying, "I'd rather be us than them." He genuinely felt his team was actually the better side on the day, despite what that heavy 3-0 defeat on the scoreboard said. But right next to that optimism, you have this incredibly stark reality check from Canada defender Alistair Johnston. He perfectly summarized the hurdle Canada just couldn't clear. Morocco's elite depth, I mean, they literally have world-class players coming off the bench. It just systematically wore out those hard-working Canadians. Let's pivot to part 4, rewriting African football history. Because look, this wasn't just a standard knockout stage win. It was another massive historic milestone for a Moroccan side that is cementing an unprecedented legacy. The Atlas Lions are now the very first African nation to ever reach 2 World Cup quarterfinals, period. By achieving this back-to-back feat following their unbelievable 2022 run, they've officially broken the tie with those legendary one-time quarterfinalist teams from Cameroon, Senegal, and Ghana. Now, what's really interesting about the number 3 is that it represents midfielder Azzedine Ounahi's brand new place in the history books. With his phenomenal performance against Canada, Ounahi became only the 3rd Moroccan player ever to score a World Cup brace. He joins absolute legends like Abdelrazak Khairi from 86 and Saladin Basir from 98. But what's even crazier, Ounahi is the very first to pull this off in the high-stakes do-or-die pressure of a World Cup knockout match. When you look at this incredible list of recent accolades for their golden generation, it is abundantly clear. Morocco isn't some surprise underdog anymore. With core talent playing for Europe's biggest clubs, they have absolutely cemented themselves as the undisputed benchmark for African football, and really a true member of the global elite. Finally, Part 5. What next for Canada? While Morocco sets their sights on the quarterfinals, Canada is left to reflect on a bittersweet but ultimately highly foundational tournament. Obviously, the disappointment of that 3-0 loss is fresh, but we really need to zoom out for a second and appreciate the historic firsts that Canada achieved on home soil. I mean, from their first ever World Cup point in a 1-1 draw against Bosnia, to a record-breaking 6-0 thrashing of Qatar, to their first ever knockout win, 1-0 against South Africa, this is exactly the kind of run designed to inspire the next generation of Canadian athletes. But to get to that next level, I want to leave you with this really provocative thought. Does Canada actually have the domestic infrastructure to build the depth required to ever match the global elite? Experts point out that Canadian soccer is still kind of in its infancy. The Canadian Premier League needs massive investment, and MLS clubs like the Vancouver Whitecaps have to remain up north to foster that local talent. So will Canada ever build the domestic talent pool required to go from being a gritty, hard-working underdog to a true world-class powerhouse? That is the multi-million-dollar question for the future of Canadian soccer. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.